Assalamu alaikum wa Ramadan Kareem and very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Shakir Zainal and I'm head of Mohamed Marashid Innovation Fund, joining you for the Insightful Innovation Journeys session, where we bring your conversation with innovators, dive into their experience, which in turn helps others, founders, learn how to accelerate their growth and maximize impact. This session will run for approximately 45 minutes, of which 25 to 30 minutes are usually allocated for main discussion followed by Q&A. Session lasting for approximately 15 minutes. Please type your question in the comment section throughout and we will do our best to post as many of them as we can with today's guest during the Q&A. Moving quickly onto our guest of the episode, I'm excited to introduce Mohamed Al Fayed, CEO and co-founder of Grubtech, one of the UAE fastest growing tech startups. Under Mohamed leadership, Grubtech client portfolio has grown rapidly to span 15 countries, managing millions worth of food orders for large organizations. Mohammed also pioneered omnichannel solution with the launch of Mamas and Papas and the Gap in the GCC, and a successful introduced the region first 2 hours e-commerce delivery promise. Besides launching of managing the region largest luxury online marketplace, Onas, and served as a senior VP of omnichannel and Al Attire Group for 12 years. Let's give him a warm welcome and give a start with this episode. Mohammed, salam alaikum and welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here with us and taking the time to join us.
Walaikum assalam, Shakir. Thank you very much, guys, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm honored that I can share our story with the viewers and the audience, and hopefully leave them with something to think about and to take into their life.
Yeah. So, Mohammed, very interesting. You have quite a career, and you had a very firmly established your reputation as a formidable tech and disruptor here in the region. You're very well known of that. And so tell us, looking at your previous experience in Altair or Onas or Gap, informed your current journey as an entrepreneur. How did that happen?
Yeah, I was, to be honest, very lucky to have the opportunity to be an intrapreneur. So somebody tasked within a very large corporation to actually disrupt it and put it out of business with a view that if we didn't do it ourselves, somebody else was. And I give credit to the leadership of the Altair organization, Khalid Altair, Mr. Ubaid Altair, and others to be that forward thinking. And in essence, I was given a small little startup to create within the organization and build out an entire division. And through that experience, you get a lot of bruises and a lot of scars, and you learn how to make decisions in the absence of data and pivot almost on a daily basis until you perfect the objective, whether it be it unit economics or a service that you're doing. So that was really my first foray into the entrepreneurship world, and that 7 years was a tremendous amount of learning that led the foundation for Grubtech.
Fantastic. That is really fascinating. Coming into your current venture of Grubtech, could you shed some lights on what exactly led you to your first plunge into the entrepreneurship and genesis of Grubtech?
Yeah, so as a retailer working for big box department stores, Macy's, Bloomingdale's, and the region here, the entire footprint, which 200 stores, Bloomingdale's and Harvey Nichols, my primary objective as the SVP of Omnichannel was creating a digital presence to the brick and mortar. And as consumers were shifting their shopping behavior from the four walls of a store to digital mediums, the challenge was, how do you combine both experiences together? So how do I see the customer as one individual, whether he buys in the store or she buys online? And how do I see our stock, our inventory, as one stock, whether it's sitting in the warehouse or sitting in the store itself? So this experience of omnifying retail actually led to Grubtech's birth. And through a fortunate event, one of my co-founders actually invested in a cloud kitchen, and we're lifelong friends, and asked me back in the day when I was in Altair, hey, can you come and take a look at the technology of a cloud kitchen? I didn't really know what a cloud kitchen was, but the learning there was a cloud kitchen is actually a distribution center for food. If you think about how we order food on the likes of Talabat or Deliveroo or Uber Eats, Noon Kareem and others, it is e-com fulfillment, except that instead of getting a handbag or a shoe, you're getting a burger or a pizza. So I've spent most of my adult life in that world. And the more I learned about the F&B industry, the more convinced I was that they're completely unprepared for the consumer shifting their behavior from eating on a table in the restaurant to getting their food warm and fast in their homes. And this was obviously pre-pandemic. We started Grubtech in October of 2019. But our thesis or our bet was this pattern is going to continue to grow rapidly and follow similar patterns that we saw in general merchandise, apparel, beauty, and the retail e-com world, except that they're completely unprepared because the technology hasn't kept up. But when we looked at the landscape closely, we saw that most of the points of sale solutions and other technology around restaurants were built in the early 90s and have not really been digitized to cater for multiple touch points, whether it's food aggregators ordering off of Instagram and the others. So we couldn't put that idea to bed. We were constantly coming to it time and time again. And to be honest with you, I that experience with Altair Digital taught me about myself that I really love the $0 to $100 million story. There is so much chaos, so much uncomfortable experiences that it really stretches your growth. And I wanted to come back to that. And that was the convincing factor to resign my post, as painful as it was for me and the team, and to jump into a complete unknown. I knew nothing about food when we started Grubtech. Actually, none of us did, and start building that company out.
Great. So, being a chief SME officer in Emirates Development Bank, and I manage Mohamed Al Fayed, whenever I hear a company started before the pandemic, I get a little bit, thinking that how challenging that can be. So I think Grubtech was founded just before the pandemic. This is what I got to know also. So come 2020, what were the challenges you faced, and how did your team started dealing with this pandemic shift? A lot of companies, I think, suffered. A lot of companies have benefited. So how did you get through this journey?
You're 100% right. I mean, we started the company in October. 4 months later, we were literally locked in our rooms in our houses with no access to anything and relying on Zoom and Slack and Teams to be able to, recruit, hire, and build out a culture and actually talk about what it is that we want to do and build. That, coupled with the fact that as soon as this happened, investors didn't know what the world is going to look like. So as a young startup relying on investor, capital to build and grow, it was quite challenging. But with that said, the silver lining for us was we were building technology that was delivery centric for restaurants and cloud kitchens and hotels and movie theaters. So literally overnight, the demand skyrocketed. And typical startups would start with the long tail or the mom and pop shop, so your local shawarma shop or your local pizzeria, before they're able to tackle the likes of Talabat's cloud kitchen or Burger King or Texas Chicken and these big 100, 200 plus enterprise accounts. But in our case, these guys literally overnight had their restaurants shut. So they were, what little PR or articles we had on LinkedIn motivated them to pick up the phone and call us and say, what are you building and can we deploy it tomorrow? So we really were under the gun here to build a lot faster than we thought we needed to build, and to satisfy that demand and to position ourselves as a rock in our mission critical system in their operation. So the positive is we grew wildly during the pandemic and we built much faster than we thought. But the challenges was, how do you build a company from the confines of your bedroom across 4 countries, right? And hiring engineering and explaining what it is that you want to build, and building culture and values and SOPs was not easy at all. It fell into a rhythm, but it took some time to get there.
Yeah. So it is safe to say that Grubtech has successfully expanded across market and I think raised capital as well. So what about Grubtech journey now has been the most gratifying aspect, and what are your aspirations for the future?
Okay, when I reflected on that question, I thought about what did Mo take out of it, and the 2 things that came up was, I'm super proud of the team and what they have built as a platform. And by that, I mean the company has attracted tremendous talent, over 160 employees in multiple countries with one objective. And we were quite prescriptive that everybody we hired had to be very passionate about solving that problem. So Grubtech inevitably became a platform for passionate people to express their interest and curiosity and produce tangible results. And to see the excitement, this self-driven excitement from engineering, product, sales, marketing about what we're doing for a CEO is incredibly fulfilling. Personally, I'm a builder. I like to bring technology to bear on a specific problem, and building as much as we have as an operating system and seeing our solution being used by 22 countries in very different formats and various degrees is incredibly exciting. I mean, for putting aside the monetary growth, the revenue, the unit economics, to have thought of something and put a whiteboard solution to it, and then actually see it processing millions of dollars in so many countries is so gratifying. And I'm so privileged to be surrounded by incredibly talented people that have made that a reality for us.
Wow. I can see you're full of, positive energies and passionate about, every piece that you have built. So a part of being extremely successful, entrepreneur, you're also a digital advisor and a mentor to many people that I also know. So what would you say that will be the hallmark of characteristic of any successful, promising, I would say, startups or even entrepreneur? I mean, you were emphasizing on being passionate, I think. Yeah.
That's a prerequisite. If you're not that passionate about the problem that you're solving, you will never have the grit or the perseverance to continue against issues, challenges, and adversaries, right? A startup journey is rife with the unknown. You have to be super comfortable with being uncomfortable, because you're making decisions in the absence of data. You're constantly having to pivot your strategy or your direction to achieve your goal as you gather more data. But if I take a step back, and having been an entrepreneur now for some time, and as you rightfully said, mentoring a bunch of startup entrepreneurs, I'd say the first thing that you have to look at is actually yourself and your life. If you are not in control of your emotions, of your physical well-being, of how your system is being triggered by stress or uncertainty or challenge, you're not going to have the grit and the perseverance to be able to sustain the constant blows of the early stages of a startup. So if I just tell you a little bit about what I do, I have a very strict regime about waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. There's a little bit of prayer, there's a little bit of meditation, there's an hour and a half of a solid workout before I even do anything. And that sets the scene for everything that happens during the day, because you don't know the minute you walk into the office whether you're going to go home at 6 o'clock that day, or you're going to be pulling an all-nighter because there's a fire that you need to put out. So if you don't have your house in order, you're not going to be able to keep your external house in order. So my advice is always to start with yourself. Are you in a good place? Are you in a good mental state? Do you have the routines, the protocols, and the tooling to be able to deal with uncertainty, stress, euphoria, and all the others. If that checklist is a solid yes, my next question is always, are you passionate about the problem that you're solving? Because if you don't care, or you're doing it just for wealth creation, or trying to make a name on the back of a unicorn or something like that, it's not enough. It really isn't. You have to be extremely obsessed with the problem, and that keeps the momentum and velocity of trying to solve for it. And like I said, just really, really, really be comfortable with being uncomfortable all the time, because it's a lot of surprises.
Yeah.
So that's usually the advice that I have, or the conversations that I have with my mentees and my coaches.
I think keeping home in order and being very passionate about issues. You know, I mean, when I look back and look at the post the pandemic, and then we thought like things are now getting better, and then we look at the economy has just about to begin to recover. Then we have a different type of challenges now ahead of us. Now,
Yes.
inflation, rise of interest, a lot of stories coming from Silicon Valley, and I don't want to go into the details, but these challenges, it will always come up, and how do you see the four seasons of their for this region, especially in your sector, and what crucial piece of advice would you give to startups and entrepreneurs to tide them through this time? I mean, on a specific maybe issues that's happening right now.
Look, if I zoom in on the F&B industry, they're going through one of the toughest, chapters of their life, and it's a very old, well-established industry. As you rightfully said, inflation is out of control. Their cost of goods, i.e., the raw materials they use to make their pizzas and their burgers, is rising by the day. Their labor costs are increasing, their rents are increasing. So ultimately, they're having to manage their unit economics far more stricter than they ever had to. Some of that is moving on to the consumer. You've seen your, cost of eating out in a restaurant or ordering food marginally going up. But the focus is really on unit economics. And if I take a couple of steps up and look at the startup ecosystem as a whole, investors are far more discerning now than they ever have been. Long gone are the days of grow at any cost. You grow, but the capital efficiency required for that growth is really under a microscope. How did you spend that money to grow to where you are? What are your unit economics? What are your path to profitability? So if I look at just the four walls of our company, I'd say that was the kick in the butt that we needed in order to really focus on our unit economics and stop doing a lot of stuff that was, I would say, a distraction, and focus on how to make this business more sustainable and future proof. If I look at the industry, I see the problems, but I also see the opportunities. And if I take the cost of goods being exponentially rising, I can say that our engineering team are working on AI-driven forecasting, incorporating large language models to be able to tell the restaurant, this is exactly how many burgers you're going to sell tomorrow. So don't buy too many patties, don't buy too little patties. So nothing ends up in the garbage can and you don't lose any sales. So this chapter requires a lot of formidable technology and smarter data-driven decisions for businesses to survive. But I think at a 30,000-foot view, it's healthy. We needed that grow at any scale, and loss-making companies for decades is simply not sustainable. So it's a correction, but a needed correction. And in that correction lies a lot of opportunities for startups to solve for.
Great. So looking, I mean, this is a very common question. Usually, it comes from the audience, but I picked it up and I thought maybe I'll ask you. If you look back at your journey as an entrepreneur and an innovator, I will say, anything you would have done differently?
Yeah, look, I got asked that a couple of times before, and I giggle because hindsight is always 2020. If I look back at last week, there's probably 672 things that I wish I didn't do, both personally and professionally. But I come from the school of thought that these errors in judgment are really good lessons, and I don't think I would have made tomorrow's right decision if I didn't make yesterday's wrong decision. It helps understand more about yourself, more about your business. So I like to say there are no regrets. I don't live in the world of I wish I would have taken a different path. I live in the world of that mistake led me to this course correction. And I'm grateful for the mistake, because if I hadn't learned it, I could have created even more damage. So I'm quite proud of all the mistakes and failures that I've had, because they're a platform in which I stand on today.
So, I mean, I have a personal question. Maybe it might be also personal. So, I
No,
mean,
please go ahead.
looking at the, managing millions worth of food orders. So I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you maybe two questions, or maybe three. I don't know. Let around that. So first of all, what's your favorite food?
Look, I'm a big burger addict. So I hunt the best burgers in any city I travel to, and make sure that I try them out. So burgers is the answer.
Fantastic. Do you cook?
I do. I
Yeah.
do.
Okay.
Yeah, a limited. I grew up in a boarding school, and I had to kind of fend for myself at an early age. So I had to learn how to cook if I wanted to enjoy, the delicacies of our culture.
Okay. So you do more orders or you do dining more?
Orders.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer of I press a button on my phone, it shows up, and I move on.
Great, great. Okay, so I think we have just maybe conscious of time. Maybe let me, because I've seen, if you look at the comments and the questions that are popping up, there's a lot of questions. So let me just move to the question from the audience. We'll start with Sarah. So 0 to 100 million, where is Grubtech on the spectrum?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's closer to 100 than it is to 0. Let's put it that way. Which is interesting for me, because there are patterns that you see as you grow to that size. And if I can be as honest and as forthcoming as I can be on this call, I can tell you, you have the typical bureaucracy, red tape, politics, that emerge when you become an organization of that size. Not from a revenue perspective or a valuation perspective. You typically have to have about 70 plus people. And when you bring that many people under one roof with all the characters, their flaws, their strengths and weaknesses, you end up as a typical office in many of the companies we've all worked for. So that's the part that I find the most challenging, is keeping the spirit of a young, small group of people incredibly passionate about a problem, rather than passionate about the title or the seat or how much influence or power they have.
So we have another Sarah. So how do you manage the risk and uncertainties associated with the fast-paced nature of tech industry?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So first and foremost, obsess about data, right? And so you've got to understand the KPIs that drive your business internally and externally, and you have to have an ability to capture it. You have to have an ability to display it, or illustrate it, whether it's a chart, graph, dashboard, portal, etc., etc. And you have to keep a very keen eye on it, because what you want to look for are early warning signals that something is not going to plan, so that you can pivot. Another trick up my sleeve is always to have a plan B and a plan C. So if you talk to my colleagues, they'll tell you I'm Mr. Plan B. Is that whenever they get presented a strategy, and my first question is, okay, when it goes wrong, what's our plan? So try to have a couple of variations of the execution plan, so that when you do experience a challenge or you hit your head up against a wall, you don't have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what you need to do to adjust. You kind of have a plan in your back pocket that you try. And the last piece of advice is actually from one of my mentors many moons ago, is never take a bet that if you're wrong in will sink the company. Every bet has to be containable or manageable, so that if you're wrong, which will typically be more often than you're right, you don't end up imploding the company as a result of that decision. So I make my bet small. If I'm wrong, I have the ability to pivot. I have early warning signals on our data, and I always have a plan B and a plan C up my sleeve.
So we have Kamal who's wants to ask you about are the underserved outcome for the customer he concentrated on? Hmm.
I'd like to ask Al Fayed, what are the underserved outcomes for the customer he concentrated on? Honestly, I mean, I don't know if I'm interpreting the question correctly, but if I take a page out of my retail life and I take a page out of my food life, I focus on the customer a lot, and particularly the customer journey. So if you take a page out of ONAS, why did the 2-hour delivery be introduced, or why did we hack the 2-hour delivery? You put yourself in the customer's shoes. I ordered something, right? And typically in luxury, it's a sense of pride, right? I ordered it because I got promoted, or I want to give it to my wife for an anniversary, or it's a birthday present or thing, and I want it now. So there's this instant gratification requirement for it, and that's why the 2-hour delivery was born, right? As a competitive advantage, as well as a customer-centric initiative. Similar thing with food, right? On average, it takes about 45 minutes from click to doorbell of your food showing up. If the restaurant is closed, it might be 30 minutes. But we obsess about, well, you're hungry. I don't want to wait 30 minutes. What kind of technology can we deploy to make that 30 minutes 20 minutes, to make that 20 minutes 15 minutes? So the short answer is, you got to map out your consumer journey, the person that you're trying to solve for, the customer. And you have to understand the entire life cycle of that journey and where there are friction points. Where is there a manual process? Where is there a time-consuming task that can be otherwise solved by technology? And that's how you tackle it. And in the very end, you ultimately evaluate the value you create for that customer, and you take an entitlement fee against it. And that's how you build a business.
Yeah. So a question from Mohammed. What role do you see the technology playing in the future of cloud kitchens, and what innovation in your company working to stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, look, I think if I tie that back to the previous question of the challenges of the industry, I'll give you an example. So labor costs in Europe are extremely high, but you're now seeing the likes of McDonald's deploying fully automated restaurants, right? Where you have a robot flipping burgers or a robot flipping fries. It's driven primarily by, well, it's going to be cheaper to bring a robot to do this task repeatedly than to hire a human being that I can't find or have to pay more than my unit economics allow me to. So you're going to see Moore's law come into place, right? So doubling of technology every 8 months and the price performance index shrinking by 30%. And as that happens, you're going to see adoption of robotics, artificial intelligence, and many new technologies into cloud kitchens, restaurants as a whole, that solve for current problems and give these guys a competitive advantage to serve their customer better, faster than their competition. What are we doing about this? We're really fascinated by the latest, innovation around LMLs, so large language models, LLM, sorry. And we have been R&Ding everything from demand forecasting that is AI driven to, using the likes of Midjourney or eDALI to create more appetizing pictures that you see on digital menus, on food aggregators, titles, descriptions, taking recipes and producing nutritional value out of it. So what are your macros, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates? What are your calories? So that you have more transparency to the food consumption that you're bringing into your body. So there's a lot of different levers that we're currently toying with, but a startup by its nature is focused on innovation, and that's what's still in our DNA. We're not yet that big lethargic corporation that is too comfortable to sit and not innovate.
So we have a question from Reem. How do you stay updated with the latest technology and advancement and trends in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, data consumption is a short answer, right? We all have kind of our weird routines. You wake up, you may check your email first, and you pop into Slack, and then you pop into WhatsApp, and then you pop into LinkedIn, and Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal. So, there are industry or trade publications that that talk about, like the Caterer and others that talk about the industry, but then there's plenty of forums where you can see the latest and greatest being published. You pick up what you find interesting, but the real test of learning is to put your hands on it, right? I'm sure when ChatGPT was announced as a release for the public, everybody went in to press some buttons and see what happens. So, we press buttons and see what breaks and what happens all the time. On a personal level, I'm a reader. My advice to the audience is a long time ago, I learned how to speed read. It's not that hard. You can probably watch a couple of YouTube videos and figure it out, but average human being reads something like 300 words a minute. This is a very easy tool to learn that ultimately takes you up to about 600 to 800 words a minute, and that can just increase the bandwidth of your data consumption. So I'd suggest looking that up, but consume everything that is of interest to you.
So we're coming to a question from Mira on what step is Grubtech taking to help fight climate change?
That's a big topic, actually, that as generations we have to contend with. But I'm proud to say that a lot of the innovation that we brought to inventory management has helped with wastage. So we've seen a significant reduction of what ends up in the garbage can because it was unsold at the end of the day. And ultimately that, has a ripple effect on the supply chain, on the purchasing, and So our goal really is to make sure that what is bought is ultimately sold and consumed and doesn't end up in the garbage and becomes a tax on our climate. So that is an angle that we see a definite benefit of Grubtech influencing our consumer base.
So a question from George. What is the edge that Grubtech have over other integration platforms?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of my customers ask me that, and honestly, we're not an integration platforms only. So without mentioning my competition, there are companies that do integrations, and that's all they do. That was never our aspiration. We started with that world, but then we ended up building kitchen display systems, inventory solutions, points of sale solutions, insights. We're now amalgamating first-party data with third-party data to be able to understand your sales as a result of the fact that it's going to rain tomorrow. So we are in hyper innovation mode, and our goal is ultimately to be the end-to-end, the all-in-one. And it goes back to something I said about mapping out your consumer journey. In this case, it's a restaurant or a cloud kitchen, and being able to be acutely familiar with each of their pain points and then bringing technology to solve for it. So we never set out a goal for ourselves to focus on one specific problem. When we conquer that problem, we move on to the next. And the first problem was blatantly clear, the integration platform. But today we have integrations with 3PLs, food aggregators, ERPs, payment solutions, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't think that is a big problem anymore. And there's plenty of companies that do it well, but that's not the only problem. You have to just move down the chain to find another problem and solve it, and then be able to connect all of this together into one harmonious technology stack. So your restaurant or cloud kitchen doesn't have to deal with a provider for a pause or a provider for inventory, provider for integration. It becomes a one neck to choke concept.
Yeah, so we have a question from Mohammed. How do you balance the need for growth and profitability with the need of sustainability and social responsibility in your tech business?
Yeah, look, I don't think that's an easy answer, and I think it really depends on your business and what it is that you strive to do. But there is no excuse today for not being socially responsible. And when I say socially responsible, I'm talking about your participation in the community, how you're affecting, or your technology is affecting the climate or affecting the world as a whole. I think now that is front and center in everybody's mind on a personal level, on a professional level. So there is a balance. Today, there is no excuse to grow and be profitable and damage the environment or your community or your city or your country in the process of doing that. You have to pick your battles carefully, and you have to assess the damage, if any, and you really can't get away with that anymore. It's not the right thing to do.
Mohamed, you started now, I think, influencing and I think inspiring a lot of audience. So I love how you prioritize your personal well-being and getting things done first thing in the morning. I see incredible determination in you, but does this come easily to you, or did you have to train yourself to follow a strict schedule?
Honestly, I would probably the exact opposite. If left to my own desire, I am lazy. I will sleep as long as you allow me to, and eat myself into death if I had to, or if I could. So no, the short answer is absolutely not. But if you can't conquer yourself, you have zero chance of conquering anything else you do, because yourself is probably the one element you have the most control over. You can decide to wake up at 5 o'clock or not. You can decide to go gym or not. In real life, you may not be able to get an investor to write you a check, or a customer to sign up with you, or somebody to join your organization. So you've got to start at home, and it's a battle, and it's not a one and done. At least once a week, I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and as I'm washing my hands, I'm going, "Oh God, I'm just going to go to sleep, and tomorrow will be a better day." So, but I've learned over, I don't know, I think I've been doing this for almost a decade now. I've learned that if it's not hard, then I don't have the muscle to execute it. So I enjoy the little voice in your head that tells you it's okay. You can get another hour of sleep, and no one is going to die. You can skip tomorrow. And then finding that willpower so deep in you to say, I'm going to get my butt up, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to get what I said I was going to do. Because you carry that throughout the whole day. It really does come through by lunchtime, or a tough conversation with an investor, or a tough conversation with an employee. You fall back on that willpower that you've exhibited so early in the morning. Okay, that source, that well of determination throughout your whole day stays with you. So that's not to say I haven't fallen off the wagon and skipped a day here or skipped a day there. No, far from it. But it is rare, and when it happens, I usually go through a period of hating myself and going right back into it again, and it's served me well.
Interesting question from Nizar. What are the mistakes that you
Hello, sorry, I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you. I'm not sure if this is the connection or not. Hello? Okay, so I'm told I'm heard, so I'll continue talking. Yeah. So, what advice do I have for new joiners joining the ecosystem from a go-to-market? It really depends on what it is that you want to do by way of your business, your go-to-market strategy. But seek all resources that you have available to you. And we are so fortunate to be living in the UAE, where the leadership of the company of the country is focused on its talent, on its entrepreneurs, does not differentiate between nationalities, religions, colors of skin, but you have so much access. You have Hub 71 out of Abu Dhabi, in 5 in Dubai, obviously in Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Center, and all, even this talk alone, where it brings a lot of experience to the audience. So take all of it. Leave no stone unturned, no opportunity under investigated. Back to what mistakes to avoid on our go-to-market. My suggestion is don't make a bet that will sink your company. GTMs are quite complex. Going to Singapore is quite different than going to Beijing. So you understand the market, understand the ICP, the ideal customer profile in that market, and make small bets, experiments we call it, until you find the right formula and then go for it. A good mentor of mine once said, fire a bullet, see where it lands, adjust, fire another bullet. When you hit bullseye, fire a cannonball. So that would be my suggestion.
Okay, I think this is our last question now. Where are you currently mentoring?
Yeah, so I'm involved in a couple of I guess incubators. There's one in Saudi that I participate in. Again, incubators that I personally have graduated from, like the Hub or In5, I participate in. And I'm accessible. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm more than happy to answer a question if I have the right answer. And again, I never proclaim I have answers to problems, but what I do have are a list of failures, a list of mistakes that I can share with you and tell you, don't do that because I tried it and it did not work, and then hopefully I can help you not repeat the same errors in judgment that I made.
Great. Okay, well, so Mohammed, that seems to be all what we have today, and I would like to really thank you for your invaluable time and generous insight. And I really enjoyed it, and there is a lot of interactive with the, with the audience. We got a lot of questions. Definitely, we have recorded this session, and inshallah we'll post it, to all our social media. So finally, I wanted to thank everyone, especially the audience, for joining us, and I hope they all enjoyed their time. And please, as usual, please look out for any announcement of our next Innovation Journeys event coming soon. Until next time, Mohammed, thank you very much, and goodbye to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Shakir. Have a wonderful day. Wa alaikum assalam.